So, how big was the house you grew up in? I was one of seven children, and we grew up in a 1,300 square foot home in El Paso, Texas. And that 1,300 square feet was after my dad built a massive den as we were getting older as children, just to create a little more space. Our home had one bathroom and three bedrooms, though we never felt crowded. And we just felt warm and at home. In fact, it felt cozy. I've visited my childhood home several times now as an adult, and I'm always amazed at how tiny that home feels now. Back when I was being raised, everything seemed grand and just big. But now, when I go back, that bedroom seems ever so small. That kitchen with a gas stove and a sink and what we used to call an ice box seems really cramped and crowded. That fence that I could scale up like I was climbing Mount Everest way back as a kid. Well, guess what? Was only 2 feet tall. So things have changed quite a bit, and I can't help but think how my perspective has changed with it, along with my appetite for more and more. And I can't help but wonder, how much is enough? That's the question we've been wrestling with as we've journeyed through the vine this week. And that journey has taken us to Luke chapter 12, where Jesus meets up with a uh, rich person who was having a squabble with his brother over an inheritance. And this man wanted Jesus to settle the dispute. And Jesus didn't want to address his legal issue, but he was very happy to address the ever so important heart issue that he was facing. And this is what Jesus said to that young man. He said, "Beware, guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own." How we all need to be reminded of that, especially those of us living in an American culture that seems to measure life and happiness and success by the uh, balance in our checking account, or maybe the size of our retirement portfolio, or the square footage of our house, or the car we drive, or even the clothes we wear on our backs. How much is enough? A couple of members of our staff just returned from a mission trip to Guatemala. And yesterday they were back in the office and sharing with joy the stories of their trip together. I thought it was wonderful as I looked at the pictures and watched the videos of their worship experiences and listened to their stories. And I was taken aback by uh, the joy and the happiness and contentment of the people they went to serve. The beautiful Guatemalan people that they ministered to lived in extreme poverty. My childhood home would have been a mansion for any of those precious lives. In fact, they were grateful if they had running water. And yet, despite of what they didn't have, they seemed to possess what was most important. They knew they were loved by God, and they had a joy and a peace and a contentment about their souls that, as I walked away, I genuinely thought, these must be the richest people on the planet. And it's true. And I think they have something to teach us. And I think it resonates with what Jesus was trying to convey in Luke chapter 12. And what was true back 2,000 years ago when he first shared those words, I think is even more true in our lives. It's not about what we possess, it's really ultimately, from God's point of view, what or who possesses our hearts. God has given us beautiful, precious gifts of his love and grace and mercy. And when God owns our heart and where we make room for God in our hearts, we become rich and contented and satisfied in our souls. So maybe the question isn't how big is our house, but how big is our heart? And is there room in here for our Creator's presence? And I believe when we make room for Him, when we're possessed not by our possessions, but by the one who owns the cattle on the thousand hills, when we allow God to take up residence in us, there's a joy and a true contentment, a happiness that radiates from our faces and from our lives. I want to live like that today. I want to live with a heart of gratitude for God's love and mercy, for His grace, and for just the gifts and blessings that He's offered to me in my life. And I believe that gratitude will reshape my heart and perhaps give me some perspective on what really matters in this life. I think those Guatemalan people had it. And I think Jesus was trying to convince that young man that came to him that day that life does not consist in our possessions, but ultimately and who possesses our lives. So may that truth resonate with your soul today, and may that joy that comes only from God radiate from your own countenance. And I have a feeling that as you smile your day away, others are going to pick up on it, and their faces are going to beam with joy as well as they discover something that we know to be true, that our God loves us and that our God is more than enough. You have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining me today. Tune in next Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. or later. It's recorded. I hope to see you tonight at the Table Fellowship. But if there's any way we can serve you in our church, please don't hesitate to reach out.